What if I told you that the problem you're facing isn't actually the real problem? Most people try to solve challenges through effort, tension, and control, as if they need to force reality until it finally yields. But that approach only reinforces the cycle of suffering. What few realize is that the block isn't in the situation itself. It lies in the internal point from which it's being observed. The conditioned mind is used to looking at challenges from the same place. It observes from fear, urgency, resistance, and as long as that point of observation doesn't shift, the vibration won't change either. Reality, in turn, responds to the observer's vibration. It's like being trapped in a hall of mirrors, believing the world is against you, when in fact it's only reflecting your inner state. In this video, you'll understand how simply changing the angle of your observation can profoundly shift how you feel, and consequently what you experience. You'll discover why your perception is the key to reprogramming your energy, dissolving reactive patterns, and opening new paths to unexpected solutions. Because when you change the point from which you observe, the energy of the challenge changes with you. And what once seemed impossible becomes a door to expansion. Are you ready to observe from a new place? The reactive mind always observes from the same place. The reactive mind is predictable. It operates like an automatic system, responding to reality based on old memories, fears, and conditionings. When you're faced with a challenge, it immediately springs into action, not to observe, but to react. And this reaction almost always comes from the same place: the need for control, the resistance to what is, the urgency to fix something it sees as a threat. This reactive mind views the world through the very frequency that sustains the problem. It sees the situation through fear, anxiety, and frustration. And immersed in this state, it believes the only solution is to eliminate or fix the challenge as quickly as possible. This creates a cycle. The more it tries to solve it, the more energy it feeds into the vibration of the problem, and the more real and resistant the problem becomes. It's like trying to put out a fire by pouring gasoline on it, unaware that the fuel is your very way of thinking. The conditioned mind doesn't know how to look at challenges with neutrality. It doesn't know how to pause, breathe, be still. It's trained to act, judge, and resist. That's why it always observes from the same fixed point, a narrow reactive place that sees the situation as something to fight, never something to understand. But there's something more subtle happening here. The way you observe a situation shapes the frequency through which it manifests. When you look at a challenge with tension, it intensifies. When you look through fear, it grows. When you look with rejection, it shuts down even more. Observation is not passive, it's active. It emits signals, vibrations, and silent commands that inform the energetic field how to organize itself around your perception. And this creates an invisible trap. The same observation angle creates the same emotional pattern, which creates the same vibrational response, which reinforces the same challenge. That's why so many people repeat the same conflicts across different areas of life. The scenery changes, the characters change, but they keep observing from the same internal place. The cycle repeats not because reality doesn't change, but because the observer doesn't. Breaking that cycle requires something counterintuitive, not reacting. Transformation begins the moment you realize you don't have to respond immediately to what you feel. You can breathe, you can become aware, you can choose not to follow the automatic impulse of the conditioned mind. And in that space between stimulus and response, something new can emerge, a new point of observation. This point isn't tainted by the urgency to fix or the anxiety to understand. It arises from silence, from presence, from the conscious choice to observe without judgment. That's where energy starts to reorganize. Not because the challenge disappears, but because your way of seeing it stops feeding it. The reactive mind is not the enemy. It's simply a reflection of old defenses that once served you. But today they can be recognized and transcended. And it all begins with the awareness that you are not the mind that reacts. You are the being that can observe the mind reacting. And from there, choose a new angle. That choice changes everything. The challenge is a vibrational mirror. Not every challenge is meant to be conquered. Some are meant to be understood, and that understanding doesn't happen on the surface of the experience, but in the deeper layers of the vibration that sustains it. Every challenge you face is, first and foremost, a reflection, a vibrational mirror showing you something about the internal state you're emitting, whether consciously or not. Reality isn't some random external force. It responds precisely to the energetic field you carry. When a challenge appears, the mind's natural tendency is to ask, "Why is this happening to me?" As if something is wrong with you or with life. But that question usually leads to judgment, guilt, or a desperate search for a linear explanation of something that is often profoundly energetic. There's a more powerful question that opens a different frequency of understanding. What is this challenge showing me about the way I'm observing reality? That question is a portal. It shifts you from victimhood to conscious observer. It creates space for you to realize that the challenge isn't against you. It's serving your expansion. That doesn't mean you deserve to suffer or that everything is your fault. It means life responds with vibrational precision to the field you're emitting. And if something keeps repeating, if something hurts, if something is stuck, maybe it's there to reveal a blind spot, an old emotional pattern, a belief that needs to be dissolved. Take, for example, someone who constantly experiences rejection. No matter how they change their environment, relationships, or strategies, the feeling of being excluded persists. What is this mirror showing? Perhaps the vibration of unworthiness is being silently sustained within, rooted in past experiences. And reality, as an intelligent field, reflects that vibration until it's seen, acknowledged, and transformed. The same goes for financial struggles, conflicted relationships, and professional blocks. These aren't punishments or coincidences. They are external expressions of internal states that are asking for your awareness. When you start to see the challenge as a mirror, something shifts. You stop fighting what's outside and begin observing what's being sustained inside. And that shift in focus is profoundly liberating because it gives you back the power to transform your own frequency. But be mindful. Observing the vibrational mirror is not about blaming yourself for everything that happens. It is an opportunity to integrate parts of yourself that have been hidden or fragmented. It's as if the universe is saying, look deeper. There's something here you need to remember, reclaim, illuminate. And when you accept that invitation, even the most intense challenge begins to transform into a tool of reconnection with your essence. Seeing a challenge as a mirror takes courage because you start to look beyond appearances. You stop asking, how do I fix this out there? And start exploring what is being mirrored in here. That reversal of perspective is where true vibrational alchemy begins. The external reality is not a sentence. It's a reflection. It neither punishes nor protects you. It only responds. And when your vibrational field shifts, what once was a challenge becomes a teacher. Because in the end, what every challenge most deeply desires is to be recognized not as an obstacle, but as a part of you asking to return to the light of consciousness. The turning point. There's a quiet, almost imperceptible moment when everything begins to shift. It's not when the external situation changes, but when you from within change how you relate to it. This is the turning point. A subtle instant when the challenge stops being an enemy to fight and begins to be seen as a portal to deeper awareness. Most people try to overcome challenges through direct confrontation, force against force. But this approach, though it may seem active, actually fuels the same cycle of resistance that keeps the challenge alive. The turning point doesn't occur when you defeat the problem, but when you decide to stop fighting it and begin observing it from a new place. Not with passivity, but with presence. Not with denial, but with neutrality. This moment doesn't require grand explanations. It just needs space. An inner space where you choose, even for a brief instant, not to react. Instead of asking, how do I make this go away? You breathe. Instead of judging what you're feeling, you allow it. Instead of resisting discomfort, you dive into it with curiosity. And it is in this seemingly simple gesture that change begins to happen. The turning point is like a crack in the armor of the conditioned mind, a small opening through which the light of awareness can enter. And once it enters, everything that once seemed solid, fixed, immutable, begins to dissolve. The weight of the challenge lessens, the tension in the body softens, the urgency fades. Not because the problem is solved, but because you are no longer inside it. You're above it, observing from a higher level. It's as if you were submerged in a stormy sea, struggling to keep your head above water until you realize you can just let go and float. The waves are still there, but now you're buoyant. You breathe. You realize there is another way to be present in the same place. And this subtle shift in perception is what transforms the vibrational field. Many mistake this point for surrender in the sense of giving up. But it's the opposite. It's a vibrational surrender to what is, not as defeat, but as openness. It's the moment when you say, maybe I don't need to understand everything right now. Maybe I just need to fully feel this. And by doing so, you deactivate the resistance programming that had been sustaining the challenge. This openness creates an internal realignment. Even without clear answers, you begin to feel that something is already reorganizing. A strange calm arises, a trust that doesn't come from logic but from vibration. You realize you are not alone, that there is a greater intelligence behind everything, waiting only for you to step out of control mode so it can manifest. This turning point can happen at any time, sometimes in the midst of a crisis, sometimes in an unexpected silence. It doesn't depend on the outside world. It only depends on your willingness to shift places within yourself, to step out of the identity that suffers and into the observer that sees beyond the form, beyond the emotion, beyond the story. And once this point is accessed, even for a few minutes, it leaves a mark. It shows you there is another way to live. It opens a path of reconnection with your essence, your inner wisdom, the universal field. The challenge doesn't disappear immediately, but its nature changes, because now you're looking at it as someone gazing into a sacred mirror, not facing an obstacle. This is the point where everything begins to transform. Not through effort, but through presence. Not through resistance, but through openness. Because sometimes all a challenge needed was to be seen with the right eyes. And those eyes only open when you choose to observe instead of react, to allow instead of fight, and to trust even without understanding. That's when the magic begins. The technique of transmutation through angle. True transformation doesn't happen when you change what's outside. It happens when you change the point from which you're observing. The world you see isn't just a sequence of objective facts. It's shaped by the lens through which you perceive it. And when that lens shifts, the whole world shifts with it. This is where the technique of transmutation through angle comes in. A simple yet profound practice that teaches us the issue isn't the challenge itself, but the way it's being observed. This technique begins with an essential principle. You are not the content of your experience. You are the consciousness observing it. But over time, we start to identify with what we feel, think, or face. When a challenge arises, the mind quickly grabs hold of a narrative of suffering, urgency, and control. It builds a story around the difficulty and traps the observer within it. That's when perception narrows, and the challenge becomes a prison. What this practice proposes is a radical shift to move your awareness from the center of the problem to an expanded vantage point, where you become a neutral observer of your own experience. In doing so, you break the identification with the drama and access a new vibrational field. The challenge is still there, but now you see it with different eyes. Eyes that do not judge, do not resist. They simply observe with presence. To begin, choose a current challenge, something that's triggering your emotions, repetitive thoughts, or a sense of powerlessness. Close your eyes. Bring the situation to mind and observe how you usually look at it. What emotions are associated with it? What do you believe about this situation? What story do you tell yourself about it? Notice the internal place from where you're observing. That place is often tight, tense, reactive. Simply acknowledge it. Now imagine yourself stepping out of the situation. Visualize yourself rising one vibrational level, moving out from the center of the storm and beginning to watch from above, as if you're witnessing the scene with neutrality. You're no longer inside the story. You're watching the story, and from there ask yourself, what is this experience trying to teach me? Don't force an answer, just feel. Let this question create space within you. From this new angle, what once felt heavy begins to lose strength. Judgment gives way to clarity. Anger dissolves into understanding. Urgency becomes presence. And almost magically, the vibration of the moment shifts because your inner state has shifted. The observer has changed. And when the observer changes, all of reality responds. This practice teaches something the logical mind resists. You don't need to change the situation to be free from it. You need to change the point from which you observe it. This vibrational shift is what opens new paths, reveals insights that were once invisible, attracts solutions that were previously out of reach. It's like adjusting the focus on a camera. The forms stay the same, but now you see clearly what was once blurred. More than a technique, this is a new way of being, a new vibrational posture toward life. When something throws you off center, instead of reacting, you breathe. When the mind wants control, you observe. When pain arises, you welcome it with eyes of presence, not of judgment. This is the path of transmutation through angle, a silent alchemy that occurs not because the world changed, but because you change within the world. And perhaps in time, you'll realize that every challenge didn't come to be conquered, but to reveal how capable you are of moving into a higher place within yourself, a place where consciousness leads, and reality becomes fluid, malleable, alive. It all begins with one choice. From where, within yourself, are you looking right now? When vibration changes, reality responds. The reality you live in is not static. It's dynamic, vibrational, and moldable. And its primary building block is the vibration you emit. Not just through your words or actions, but through your inner state, emotions, beliefs, silent thoughts, and most of all, the vantage point from which you observe everything that happens. When that vibration changes, the universe has no choice but to respond. This is where transformation begins to touch the visible plane. Up until now, it all seemed internal, working on perception, emotional awareness, presence. But vibration doesn't remain contained within you. It extends outward, informing the field around you. There's a constant communication between your inner state and the structures of reality surrounding you. And that communication isn't rational, it's energetic. The quantum field that permeates all existence functions like a mirror, responsive to your vibrational content. It doesn't judge, interpret, or question, it simply reflects. If your inner field is aligned with fear, scarcity, or a need to control, that's exactly what it echoes back. But when you shift your inner angle of observation, when you access a space of neutrality, trust, and surrender, this new vibration begins to reorganize the experiences around you. Often, this change is not immediate or dramatic. It may show up as a subtle relief, a new insight, a synchronistic sign pointing to a new direction. It might be a sudden realization, a shift in someone's behavior, or an inexplicable sense of lightness in a moment that once felt like chaos. Reality begins to reorganize because you're no longer sending out the same signal, and the field, in its neutral intelligence, responds to this new vibrational command. This is the difference between trying to change the world through effort and changing it through awareness. The first path is heavy, exhausting, resistant. The second is light, fluid, and quietly effective. You don't have to convince the universe to help you. It's already ready to collaborate, as long as you emit the frequency that matches the reality you want to live. Changing your vibration is not about positive thinking or masking genuine emotions. It's about welcoming what you feel, observing it without getting lost in reactivity, and allowing your point of view to rise. That inner movement alters the vibrational signature of your presence. And when that signature changes, your environment responds. It's inevitable. Reality is not punishing you, nor testing your strength. It's showing you, with precision, the energetic field you're feeding. And by shifting that field, even slightly, you alter the mirror. The reflection transforms. What once seemed solid begins to soften. What was stuck begins to flow. The pieces rearrange because the center of the experience, you, is now vibrating differently. This understanding lifts the burden of trying to control everything. You don't have to fix every detail with your hands. You simply need to nurture the inner state from which the solutions emerge. Because when you vibrate in alignment with your essence, reality doesn't resist. It moves with you, and it's at this point that subtle miracles begin to occur. Not as magic that denies logic, but as natural manifestations of a field coherent with your new vibration. So if something feels blocked, if life doesn't seem to respond, maybe it's not about what you're doing, but about who you're being while doing it. Change your center. Observe yourself with presence. Adjust the frequency from which you face the world, and allow life in its vibrational intelligence to respond to the new version of you that is emerging. Because it always responds. Always. Maintaining the new point of observation. After experiencing a shift in perception, a sense of relief, clarity, even lightness arises. It's as if a curtain has been lifted from your eyes, and for the first time, the challenge no longer seems so heavy, so threatening. In this new point of observation, the world takes on a new texture, the body relaxes, and the mind quiets. But soon after, an almost inevitable motion occurs. The old mind tries to regain control. And if you're not conscious, it can drag you back to the old pattern. That's why maintaining the new vantage point requires presence, intention, and daily practice. The conditioned mind is like a well-worn trail in a forest. It's been traveled so many times that it became automatic. Even after an expansion, it will try to pull you back to the familiar path. Familiar thoughts reappear, impulsive reactions kick in, subtle judgments resurface. At times, it may feel like nothing has changed, and many give up believing the shift wasn't real. But it was. What's missing is the anchoring of this new vision into a stable vibrational state. This anchoring doesn't happen through force or rigidity, but through conscious repetition. Every time you're tempted to revert to the old way of seeing, the one that judges, resists, and struggles, you have an opportunity to choose differently. And that choice, made repeatedly, opens a new internal path, one that is lighter, broader, more aligned. A powerful way to sustain this state is to cultivate vibrational reminders throughout your day. Not as pressure, but as anchors of presence. Simple questions like, from where am I observing right now? Or, is this thought coming from my conditioned self or my conscious self? Have the power to interrupt automatic cycles and reconnect you with the expanded point of view. It doesn't matter if the answer doesn't come immediately. The simple act of asking already initiates the realignment. Another key understanding is this: slipping back into the old pattern doesn't mean failure. It's part of the process. The mind will try to take the reins again because it's been trained that way for a long time. The secret lies in recognizing the movement without identifying with it. You can notice that you're being pulled back and still remain present. That lucid observation is already an act of power. The fall only becomes a prison when you forget you can rise again at any moment. In time, you'll start to realize that the new point of observation is actually your natural state. It's not a technique or a spiritual performance. It's the space where your essence resides. The challenge isn't in holding on to it, but in remembering to return to it whenever necessary. Each return strengthens the path. Every time you choose to observe instead of react, to quiet instead of judge, to breathe instead of control, you're silently affirming, I am the conscious observer. And as this new gaze stabilizes, the world around you begins to shift too. Not in a dramatic or instant way, but subtly and consistently. Situations no longer dominate you. Emotions no longer drag you. You become the calm center in the midst of any storm. And even when external chaos persists, something within you remains untouched. Maintaining the new point of observation is like tending to an inner garden. It requires attention, care, and patience. Sometimes the soil dries, sometimes the wind comes, but you know where the root is. And every time the old mind tries to pull you away from it, you can smile inside and remember, I know who is observing. I know where I choose to see from. And it's that choice made in silence that builds the new reality you will live in. We've reached the end of our journey, and now you know, it's not the challenge that determines your reality, but the inner place from which you observe it. When you change the point from which you see, what once seemed fixed becomes flexible. Tension dissolves. Reality responds with new possibilities. The world doesn't need to change for you to feel free. You only need to change how you're positioning yourself before it. With every challenge, there's a silent invitation to observe from a new place, higher, more conscious, more aligned with who you truly are. And the more you hold this new gaze, the more life begins to reveal its natural flow, without resistance, without struggle, just with presence. If this journey awakens something deep in you, write in the comments, "I choose to observe from a new place." That way I'll know you've made it to the end, and that you're ready to transform your reality from the inside out.